What no one tells you about avoir in French is that it's the secret verb to unlocking a ton of phrases and expressions. If you've ever felt stuck on how to say really simple things, like I'm feeling sleepy, I'm feeling cold, then this video will show you those phrases and so many more. In this video, we'll go over some miscellaneous avoir expressions, expressions that express to be something or a certain way, and we'll also give you a couple quizzes to really lock in your knowledge. Avoir envie de. No, this doesn't have anything to do with envy. Avoir envie de actually just means to want, but in many cases it has the connotation of to feel like. So try identifying the distinction between these two sentences. Je veux aller à la plage. J'ai envie d'aller à la plage. The first one simply means I want to go to the beach, while the second one is more like I feel like going to the beach or I'm in the mood for the beach. Avoir le goût du risque. This one simply means to have a bit of a daring side or like adventure. Goût means taste, so this is kind of like saying someone likes the taste of adventure. As we can see from the sample sentence, this phrase, like many others, can be used in the infinitive form. Il faut avoir le goût du risque pour devenir soldat. Avoir mal à. This phrase is simply used to mean that something is hurting in your body or it just doesn't feel right. J'ai mal à la tête means I have a headache, or elle a mal aux épaules means she has pain in her shoulders. Another phrase you might want to keep in mind is avoir mal au cœur, which has a couple different meanings. The first is to be feeling nauseous, which is a bit counterintuitive since cœur means heart. And the second is a bit of a more figurative pain, which is experiencing heartache or sadness. Make sure to adapt the a to the word that you're using, so au, à la, or au plural, like this example.
J'ai mal aux dents.
Avoir du mal à. Make sure you don't confuse this phrase with the previous one. Avoir du mal à means to have trouble or difficulty with something. Let's say you're learning how to sing, you might say J'ai du mal à apprendre cette chanson. A related phrase is avoir le mal du pays, which means to be homesick, since pays means country.
Ou que vous êtes à l'étranger pour du travail. Enfin bref, si vous êtes à l'étranger pour une période de temps assez longue, il y a quelque chose de souvent inévitable que tout le monde rencontre au moins une fois, c'est le mal du pays.
Avoir besoin de. Saying that you need something is so important in your second language. J'ai besoin de means I need blank. I know it's kind of weird that there's no verb that means to need in this context, but make sure you don't forget this phrase. Also, just to clarify any confusion, the verb devoir does mean to need, but it's more in the context of it is necessary to, like il doit faire les tâches ménagères. This means he must do the chores, but it doesn't imply that he is in need of something or requires something. A common mistake I see learners make is saying je besoin instead of j'ai besoin. Remember, besoin is not a verb, so make sure that you're conjugating avoir. Nous avons besoin, ils ont besoin. We can see from this sample sentence that you can separate the besoin in de with an adverb in between, like bien évidemment in this case, and that's totally fine as well. Before we go on, let's do a quick quiz. What's wrong with this sentence? J'ai du mal à la ventre. So actually there's two things wrong with this sentence. The first is that with aching body parts, you don't use du. And the second is that ventre is actually masculine, so it should be au ventre instead of à la ventre. So the complete sentence should be j'ai mal au ventre. I have a stomachache. Avoir lieu. Avoir lieu means to take place in reference to events, and it can also mean to be held or to occur. For example, la fête va avoir lieu le mois prochain. Avoir confiance. Avoir confiance means to have trust, and often you'll see it used with en for people, like j'ai confiance en elle, and don for things, like ils ont confiance dans le système de santé. This is pretty intuitive since confiance means trust, faith, or confidence. Avoir l'air. Avoir l'air basically means seem, like tu as l'air fatigué would mean you seem tired. However, avoir l'air is a bit different than the verb sembler. For one, sembler is often conjugated just in the il form, like il semble, and often followed by the subjunctive, while avoir l'air is conjugated in reference to your subject. Some people also say that sembler has more of a tone of skepticism, like il semble qu'elle dorme, mais elle est réveillée. It seems that she's sleeping, but she's actually awake. While avoir l'air is more definitive. Something appears a certain way and it is a certain way. But this distinction is not concrete and at best is very small. Most people say it depends on French speakers' perceptions of the phrases. Avoir voix au chapitre. Avoir voix au chapitre means to have a say in the matter. But how would you even know that if you saw this phrase? Especially if you're watching something with regular subtitles, there's no way to know that this group of words should be looked up together or grouped together. And that's why I really like having FluentU as a language learning guide. With FluentU, you can look up the definitions of words in context. In this case, this phrase is grouped together and you're getting the meaning of it relevant to its current use. That way, you're making a real-time connection between the words that you hear, what they mean, how they're said, and what context they're used in. There's a link to a free trial in the description and I highly recommend you check it out. That actually brings us nicely to avoir expressions that use the verb to have, avoir, to express to be a certain way. Avoir chaud ou froid. So let's say it's a really hot day and your friend asks you whether you want to go on a hike with her. But you're really hot, so you can't really be bothered to go, so you respond with, Je suis très chaud. Well, if you say this, you might actually find yourself on the way to a trail. Or you might get a really weird look. Confused? Je suis chaud is actually a slang term to say I'm down, like I'm down to do something. Most people also agree that it has a very suggestive sexual connotation, but I've definitely heard quite a few French people use this just to say that I'm down, and language forums confirm this as well. So I would just say exercise a bit of caution with this phrase and just make sure the context is obvious. On the other hand, avoir chaud means to be hot and avoir froid means to be cold. Avoir raison. This is the second avoir expression we saw in the Guardians of the Galaxy clip, and this just means to be right. So the complete sentence was, she's right, you don't have a say in the matter. Elle a raison, t'as pas voix au chapitre. Avoir tort. Since we just went over to be right, the opposite of that, avoir tort, means to be wrong. Il a tort, le restaurant n'est pas là.
Vous ferez des soupes.
Non mais t'as tort de te moquer, hein. Avec ça, ma mère, elle a une patate de dingue, hein.
Did you catch the other avoir expression she slid in that video clip? Avoir une patate ou une patate de dingue means to be in a crazy good mood or to have a lot of energy. And for more phrases like that, you should definitely check out our video on how to express your emotions in French. Now you must be wondering, what's the difference between the phrases avoir raison and avoir tort and the adjectives mauvais and correct? So comparing the sample sentences for correct and avoir raison, we can see that correct has more of the connotation of properness or decency, while avoir raison simply means to be right. So if you said elle est correcte, you would be kind of saying she is proper or decent, which is kind of a weird phrase and doesn't really come up much in everyday speech. As for mauvais, with people, this has more to do with people's morality or character. If you were to say that il est mauvais, you would be implying that he has bad morals or bad character. However, you could use it to describe a thing that's wrong, like c'est la mauvaise réponse. It's the wrong answer. So in general, avoir raison and tort are used more for people, while correct and mauvais are used more for things. Avoir peur. Avoir peur means to be scared, and this would always trip me up as a learner because I was always fishing for a verb that meant to be scared rather than this avoir expression. And it's often used in the construction avoir peur de, like nous avons peur des tremblements de terre. We're scared of earthquakes. Let's do another quick quiz. What's another way to say the sentence using an avoir expression? Il paraît que le garçon est triste. If you said something like le garçon a l'air triste, you'd be correct. Paraître means to appear, look, or seem, so it's quite similar to the expression avoir l'air. You just have to notice that the syntax changes a bit when using avoir l'air in comparison to paraître. Avoir de la chance. You know that button on Google that no one really knows what it does, but it just says, I'm feeling lucky? Well, if you change your Google to French, it's actually an avoir expression. Avoir de la chance means to be lucky, and it simply derives from the phrase la chance, which means luck or opportunity in French. Avoir conscience. Avoir conscience simply means to be aware of something, and it can also mean to be conscious or alert. In this example, Norman is describing how to earn money in your sleep, so he says sans même en avoir conscience, without even being aware of it. Avoir faim, avoir soif. In case you're wondering whether avoir expressions are actually used in French, remember avoir faim and soif, to be hungry and to be thirsty. Or what about quel âge as-tu? How old are you? Verb expressions and constructions in French often use to have for things that English would use to be. So yes, these avoir expressions are used all the time and they come up literally every day. Avoir sommeil. Another simple expression is avoir sommeil, which means to be sleepy. So for example, il avait tellement sommeil après le match du foot. Avoir l'habitude. Do you have a guess of what this word means? You may have spotted the English word habit in the beginning, so avoir l'habitude means to be used to something. You may have also heard something similar in the expression comme d'habitude or comme d'hab for short, which means as usual. For example, j'ai l'habitude de me réveiller à 7 heures du matin. Here's another example.
Parce que j'ai l'habitude de faire de bonnes cuissons et je travaille bien. Mais...
So now that you have some expressions to sound more natural in French, I highly recommend you watch our video on making French friends to really take your conversation skills to the next level. And to make it easier for you, we've included a free PDF below with all these avoir expressions so that you can have access to them anytime.